So now we move on to our media picks for the month. And if you don't mind me going first, I
I've got
will.
a better punchline than you have.
God, I know what your media pick is, and it. Yeah, you're right. You have. But no, in all seriousness, as much as your media pick makes me want to scream, my media pick makes me want
Me,
to weep. Yeah, it
me
really
too.
does.
Me too.
In so much as it's a documentary called Stealing History. It comes from 2006, and it was presented to me as a recommendation on Netflix. It's around about 51, 52 minutes long, presumably designed to be on TV with 10 minutes of adverts. And it's a journalistic investigation of an incident that completely passed me by. I had no idea that this happened, and I would strongly recommend that any archaeologists out there watch this if they can, if it's on their Netflix or whatever other services are available. Um, it's an investigation of the international trade in illicit antiquities, which is an ongoing hot topic. We've been talking about this in a previous segment on this watching brief, but it centres in particular around items including something called an incantation bowl, or 600 incantation bowls, seemingly taken from war zones through the Middle East and into London. And this isn't necessarily surprising to me. I wasn't overly shocked by the existence of illicit trade. But what stunned me was the the action of UK-based academics, archaeologists, and curators, essentially as artifact launderers, making these things legitimate by studying them. Uh, what? Because you've watched this as well. What's your thoughts on stealing history?
Well, two things. I mean, now, partly, as you say, unfortunately, we're because of what's been happening recently in Egypt, and then latterly, more particularly in Iraq and Syria under Daesh ISIL, we're very familiar now with the issues of conflict antiquities, and that there are more overt public attempts to deal with it by the authorities,
Mm-hmm.
UNESCO, national authorities, and the police and so on, customs office officials, the EU. Um, but back in 2006, when this was made, it was a relatively new area of concern. It had been
Mm.
obviously it was an area of concern enough that a documentary maker set out to make the film. Um, but I think what it does do brilliantly and in a very cool but important way is expose one of academic archaeology's dirty secrets, and that is the legitimization of unprovenanced, in this case, provably stolen artifacts, cultural artifacts. Um, as you say, effectively laundering them, legitimizing them by studying them and publishing them,
Mm. Adding to their value
adding to
as
their value
well.
by making them public objects.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, now, but I think for me, the most fascinating thing about this whole documentary was that in the follow-up, because the the documentary focuses on the collection of a Norwegian collector called Martin Schoyen
Hmm.
and his relationship in supplying material that was being studied by certainly one of the most high-profile archaeology departments in the UK, the Institute of Archaeology at University College London.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and at one stage in the documentary, for example, there is secret filming, presumably because they couldn't get permission to film openly, of a an academic associated with UCL delivering a public lecture where that academic admits that they can't provenance the material they've just a lot of the material they've just been talking about.
Mm. Mm.
In fact, although there is no proof that Shoyan knew this, and therefore we can't say he's an out and out villain and criminal, um, the material that was being discussed, the incantation bowls and Buddhist scrolls that come from Afghanistan, incantation bowls from Iraq, both of these have been illicitly obtained and exported and trafficked into the London art market.
They're kind of the artifact equivalent of a blood diamond.
Precisely that. Precisely
Yeah.
that. What's fascinating though about this is what happened afterwards, because UCL, and to their credit, people who were then employed at UCL, including Nick Merriman, who's a very distinguished academic archaeologist and museum curator, appeared on camera and put their
Looking
points
very uncomfortable.
clearly, because they were being, I think, probably being asked questions in public for the first time, actually.
Yeah.
Given the chronology of this. But what happened afterwards is even more interesting. There was an almighty row after the documentary was completed and shown. There was an almighty row between Shoyan and UCL, which ended up in legal action. Now, in the meantime, UCL had commissioned a report which by three people, which included Lord Renfrew, probably our most distinguished living UK archaeologist, member of the House of Lords, incredible career at Cambridge and as a prehistorian. And absolutely impeccable credentials as somebody who's campaigned against conflict antiquities and looting and trafficking for much of his career. And the report came to some pretty... Sorry, it's not the camera there. The report came to a pretty damning conclusion. And I'll just read one short paragraph. We conclude, Renfrew and his team wrote, we conclude that UCL did not undertake any diligence check when receiving the bolts from Mr. Shoyan, nor did UCL have in place appropriate procedures, reporting mechanisms and sanctions for dealing with such issues being trafficking, lack of provenance, etc. Now, the point is that as part of the legal settlement that UCL reached with Shoyan, that report was suppressed. I'm only able to read it to you now because it was put out on WikiLeaks. It's the first time I've ever had to go to WikiLeaks for an archaeological report.
And I mean, it's just astonishing. I mean, because so this morning you sent me a couple of links to news stories. For example, Al Jazeera put out a review, more or less, of the documentary called Stealing History.
Yeah.
There's something in The Guardian, and also something in on the website sciencemag.org. But also, I think we should probably, it's okay to include the link from WikiLeaks as well. I think below.
Absolutely, I think we absolutely have to. It's history now, and hopefully, I'm sure UCL would say that there are new staff in place, there are new mechanisms in place. This couldn't happen again, but it was clearly deeply embarrassing, and that conclusion suggests they'd taken their eye off the ball if they ever had the eye on the ball in the first place.
Well, and the thing you see is that you say it was deeply embarrassing. This is what makes me so uncomfortable in that sense. Watching this is that I, to a certain extent, don't think people. I think the hunger for knowledge in this instance, just as the hunger to acquire goods for an art collection drives the super rich to fuel these trades, the hunger for knowledge meant that they just didn't particularly care. They wanted to study this material, and so. There's a quote here saying that UCL found itself in an anomalous and potentially damaging position, and I can't help but think that this isn't necessarily as anomalous as they would like to portray. And as I say, this relates back to what we were talking about earlier, in terms of a renewed international desire to examine museums and their relationship to artifacts. And I think this sort of thing is it's shameful, but it's got to be a necessary thing if we're going to, as it were, properly cleanse ourselves and get into a situation where we can actually properly examine these issues in the light. And this sort of material cannot be suppressed, and it needs to be open access, definitely. So as I say, this is where I had to recommend it. It's well worth a watch. It is on Netflix, and it's I didn't know what I was in for. Basically, the description just talks about revealing the illicit antiquities trade, and I thought I knew what it was going to tell me, and it surprised me. So yeah, worth watching, definitely.
Absolutely, it's history now, but it's really important history.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so what's your media pick for the month?
My media pick for the month is it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
Okay, go on. Go on.
I will just I'll just read you the headline from Deadline Hollywood, which is an American website looking at the TV industry.
Yeah.
Megan Fox to Topline Mysteries and Myths series for Travel Channel. Now, you were telling me earlier, which I hadn't realised, that Megan Fox, as well as being famous for appearing in the Transformers movies, once claimed to have harboured ambitions to be an archaeologist. She's now, with the assistance of the Travel Channel, decided to cut to the chase. And following in the footsteps of Tony Robinson, who wasn't a trained archaeologist when he went to front time team, although he was obviously hugely enthusiastic and knowledgeable about history and knew Mick Aston, Megan Fox has been given a series to front. The blurb that goes with the article says, Travel Channel has green-lighted Mysteries and Myths with Megan Fox, working title. A 4-episode, hour-long series with Megan Fox, who serves as co-creator, host and executive producer. Fox has been obsessed since an early age with the history of ancient peoples, culture and places, and always questioned their documented story. You can see where this is going, can't you? And now she's embarking on an epic personal journey across the globe where archaeologists and experts will re-examine history, asking tough questions and challenge conventional wisdom that has existed for centuries. The series will delve into some of the greatest mysteries of all time, including whether Amazon women really existed and whether the Trojan War was real. And then the group presidents of the company of the travel Investigations Discovery Travel Channel, a man called Henry Schleif, said, when it comes to debunking the myths around some of our greatest historical mysteries, Megan Fox's passion for discovering the truth is just visceral. We're as delighted to have her fresh and unbiased perspective on these events as we are to have Megan in our Travel Channel family.
Do you know what else is visceral? A huge tub of horse shit. That's very visceral, isn't it? That in your face, you're not going to be able to ignore that. You see, there's another quote with this story, because this has been it's been copied and pasted to another website called Inverse as well. So I think it's the same writer. She goes on to say, history not only gives us a one-sided view of the truth, Fox tells Deadline, I haven't spent my entire life building a career in academia, so I don't have to worry about my reputation or being rebuked by my colleagues, which allows me to push back on the status quo. So much of our history needs to be re-examined.
This is it. You see, you and I, we're part of the conspiracy. I realise now, you and I, we're part of the conspiracy. I can't wait for Megan Fox to
blow that apart.
The world what we've been getting wrong all this time and what our colleagues have been keeping from us.
Davis S. Anderson, an archaeologist who specialises in debunking pseudo-archaeology, I'm reading here because I don't trust myself just to talk about this, takes umbrage with Fox's assertion. To me, he says, this clearly shows she has embraced the idea that professional archaeologists are too narrow-minded to see the truth. He tells Inverse. It is a touch offensive to the profession, but sadly it's also a vast misrepresentation of the profession. New ideas are constantly being introduced and debated, i.e. there's no such thing as a one-sided version of the truth. I won't get into the philosophy of what truth is, but never mind. The field is very active and flexible. The characterization of it as narrow-minded are clearly pejorative views that originate outside the field by those who have little familiarity with what goes on inside archaeology.
I just think it's going to be one of the highlights of probably next year when it comes out. I mean, the reason I've got so much confidence in this, I mean, first of all, it plays absolutely to the whole fake news, mainstream media misleading the people agenda. It is clearly coming straight out of that playbook. But you know what? You know the reason I've got so much confidence in this series and why I'm so looking forward to it. Why I think its academic credentials are going to be absolutely impeccable. You know why? You do know why, don't you? You know what's coming. The production company who are making it is Carga 7 Pictures. And Carga 7 Pictures make my favourite all-time documentary series at the moment, Hunting Hitler. So anyway, thanks everyone for watching Brief. Obviously, I mean,
no, yeah, Ancient Aliens has for a long time. It's been a meme. It's been in the past I talked. There's a video where I talked about there was a TV series called, I think it was called Forbidden History or something, on yesterday. This is where those TV series kind of implicitly imply that they've been lying to you. Let's find the truth, and it's kind of the it's that sort of it's almost like a novel. It's like reading a modern adventure novel.
Yeah,
it is inspired by Indiana Jones. This TV series is literally setting out to say archaeologists are liars. And I'm going to tell you the truth because I once heard about Amazon women. I once heard of, and the thing is as well is that she's tackling the stated issues that they may well be tackling are issues that are like they're 100 years old. These are questions that people were asking questions about the Amazons like 100 years ago, which have been since then talked about and explored, and actually we have come to the conclusion that there's possibly some real basis for the Amazons. And all you need to do is just read a book. You just read it, or just talk to someone who knows what they're doing, or maybe I'm so it.
But don't forget, this is part of the entertainment industry, but it's also part of the of the current vogue for post-truth public discourse. This is the archaeological equivalent of Alex Jones and InfoWars.
And I get that, I do. And the thing is, popularism is a thing. I understand. But actual archaeology, actual archaeological investigation can also be entertaining. It's one of the reasons why I do what I do. Why I deliberately try and find odd ways to talk about the past, picking up on things like, ancient Egyptians played board games, this kind of thing. It's because you don't have to present it with a po face. You don't have to toe some sort of some sort of prescribed liturgy or whatever from those on high who are telling you how to talk about the past. But you do have to, at some point, come at it from an informed perspective. And yes, okay, if I just take some sort of pill, I can possibly see this as just entertaining. But most people, and unfortunately archaeologists aren't most people, most people, they engage with history, in particular on television, and they're presented with just increasingly crappy role models. It's just offensive, and I've talked about this in the past about how archaeology is particularly susceptible to this, and for some reason television producers don't seem to care about presenting the past in a rigorous way, or finding the good stories.
Some producers.
No, okay, so some.
But the concern is it's increasingly more. But yeah.
Well, the assumption is that the assumption is that history is done with. There's nothing new to talk about, and so we might as well make shit up. And it's very annoying. It's very annoying, and also that's where the story is. That's where the TV is. That's where the views are, is in making stuff up, or in challenging the received, patriarchal. It's very disappointing. But yeah, we can watch it. I'm sure, as you say, it'll be fun to review.
I think it's the importance of this, and actually, in being serious for a moment, why I wanted to highlight it, apart from the fact I just find it absolutely hysterically funny that Cargason, the hunting from the people that brought you Hunting Hitler are bringing us this. I think it plays to something which I'm increasingly concerned about. And in fact, I'm just finishing off a paper about it. I think archaeologists have to engage with this stuff.
Yeah.
And and have to actually, make fun of it, satirize it, attack it, not let it go out into the public domain without an answer. Because if we don't do that, it won't just go away, and other producers won't make more properly founded documentary.
Well, this is a slightly crass analogy, but in the same way that you wouldn't turn up to a wedding in your boxer shorts, this has to be highlighted. It's just stupid. It's just irrelevant, and it has to, in that sense you have. I've often thought, for example, and I've talked about this, for example, with Mike Hayworth in the past in an interview, I think, about the idea that increasingly maths, being illiterate at maths, for example, is something which is increasingly unacceptable. It's no longer really acceptable just to go, oh, I just don't know how to do maths. Children now are going, well, maths isn't that hard, and they're being exposed to how to do it properly, and therefore actually decent conversations are happening surrounding division, this kind of thing. I think the same has to be said of history. We can't continue like this because it has an impact on how the public views archaeology. Ultimately, it has an impact on how much people are willing to pay for archaeology. Ultimately, it's the reason why eventually you get archaeological sites being constructed over, or being sold off, or archaeologists just not being able to earn a living doing good work, because it's presented on a popular level as something that is just a laugh, and it's just hideous. And you get, as one last thing I just want to say though, I'm not going grr, attractive Hollywood lady presenting TV show is wrong. I'm not. In that sense, I understand the desire to have a face that people want to watch on TV. I get it.
Yeah.
It's all about what's driving that, what's the quality of the information is behind that. She can be a Tony Robinson, but the thing is, Tony Robinson hung out with archaeologists. Tony Robinson ingratiated himself with Mick Aston, a pioneer of public archaeology and a genuinely nice, good teacher. And Tony Robinson helped me, actually, growing up, to understand the thought processes of the archaeologists. He didn't come in and just stomp. Okay, sometimes he stomped in and asked really weird questions, but that's forgivable in the context of the whole series. But he certainly didn't start off, hit the whole premise of Time Team by saying, these guys, they're liars.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you the truth. Anyway, sorry.
Rant over. No, look, I'm with you. I think I need to make absolutely clear. I'm not with colleagues who say, this should be banned.
No.
This is unacceptable. That's not the way to engage with this stuff. Apart from anything else, it's being made in America. There's something called the First Amendment. Freedom of speech, and
but also, we have freedom of speech as well.
We have the Human Rights Act, and we have at the time the Charter of Fundamental Rights.
Oh, come on! We have a long-standing British, tradition of freedom of speech. We do.
Which gives us the freedom to say this is actually, in the immortal words of the great public archaeologist and pioneer TV archaeologist, Professor Glyn Daniel, this series is bullshit.
Yes. Yeah. But it's visceral. So,
actually, I should say, as it hasn't been made yet, this series is likely to be bullshit.
Yes, indeed. A great big bucket. So that brings us to a close for the month on, I think, actually not a low note. It's actually quite a high note. This should be a rallying call for archaeologists, I think, and all of the issues that we've been talking about in this month's Watching Brief are all things that archaeologists shouldn't be afraid to challenge themselves with. So there you go. It's a positive ending to the month.
Don't get mad, get even.
Exactly. Or get rigorous.
Get making programs.
Exactly. Thank you as ever for your time this month, Andy. I know you've got to rush off. In fact, you're probably a bit late for your next appointment. But also as well, thank you to you guys at home for watching. Please do comment below. Please do email us with any news stories that you want us to cover. And until next month's Watching Brief, do take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.